Loretta Ables Sayre has gone from singing backup for Keola and Kapono Beamer to performing jazz standards at some of Hawaii's classiest nightclubs. As an actor, Loretta has been Auntie in numerous television shows, and she's played the role of Pualusa in You Somebody as no one else can. And now she's on the world's biggest stage.
Long Story Short with Leslie Wilcox, produced with Sony Technology, is Hawaii's first weekly television program produced and broadcast in HD. High definition, it's in Sony's DNA.
Aloha mai kako, I'm Leslie Wilcox. Welcome to Long Story Short. You know, most times in life, we get to choose our own path, whom we marry, what our career is. But sometimes, destiny takes over, just when you thought your life was what it is, what it always will be. You meet someone, and that someone affects your life in a way that you never imagined. This is the story of Loretta Ables Sayre and destiny. So, at some point, David Sayre came into your life.
Yes.
How did that happen?
Oh my gosh. By the grace of God, really. I was singing at the Halekulani and had some friends a couple of girlfriends that worked with this guy, and they happened to be coming in to see me that night at work. As it happened, they were bringing in a young girl, a cousin of one of them, who was graduating from college. Anyway, I was sitting down talking with them, and I got up to do a set. And so it was this couple, husband and wife, and this girl sitting at the table, and while I was working, this guy came in and joined them, who I assumed was her husband. And I walked up to the table when I went on break, and I was a little sassy that night. I know, shocking again. And I walked up
You?
Who'da thunk? I walked up to the table where he was sitting, and my friend said, "By the way, Loretta, this is David." And I said, "Hi, David, you're sitting in my chair." And he kind of looked at me, and I said, "It's okay. I'm a Filipino in an evening gown. I can get my own chair. Don't worry about it." And I went over and grabbed this heavy teak chair and dragged it across the room, and he let me. And I dragged it over, and I sat down, and we picked up the conversation where we had been talking before, and he was funny and sweet, and he was making me laugh. And I remember thinking fleetingly in my head, having this little conversation with God really quickly, that, you know what? She is so lucky. If I could meet somebody like this would be, God, you know, this guy, somebody like him. And by the end of that night, it was very clear that he didn't even know her name. And he handed me his business card, and I didn't know what to do with this business card. It said PR. I said, "What do I do? Call you if I need PR?" And he said, "Or you can just give a call," which I would never do. And he left, and I just couldn't get this guy out of my head. And I had a very dear friend that was visiting town who said to me, "You know what, you're going to call that number on that card and just say hello to him." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because I don't want to hear 6 months from now, I wonder whatever happened to that guy." So I was shaking, and I called this number, his business number, and I said, "It was really nice meeting you. I hope you come and see us at the club. We're there every night except for Sunday, Monday." And I hung up and got that out of the way. And he called back and met my friend and I for cocktails on my night off. And I was so afraid that he was going to be yet another
Dead end.
Yes.
Now, had you talked to your girlfriend? Was she doing some communicating with the both of you?
Oh, no, actually, no, she wasn't. She wasn't at this point, because this happened very, very quickly. In fact, I think I did call her the next day and leave a message for her saying, I need more information about him. Because we didn't have Google back then.
Right.
And as it was on our next, I believe it was 8 dates, we dated for 2 months before we even kissed. And every time he called me up to ask me out to dinner, I would bring a chaperone along. I would make an excuse that I have a girlfriend.
What's with you? Why?
Well, because at this point I was 39 years old, and I had been through the dating thing and just wasn't interested in going there again. If they were going to come into my life, I wanted to know exactly who they were. No more of the stupid cutesy flirting thing. Who are you as a human being, and what's important to you? So every time he would call me up, I would have this friend, because if you have a friend there, you can't be stupid. And we would talk about everything that was important in life. We talked about politics, all the things you're not supposed to talk about. Politics and abortion and religion and all of those things. And by the time we finally did have our kiss, I knew who he was. And I knew his soul.
What was he thinking all this time? Did he think, wow, does she like me or not? Why do we always have to have a chaperone?
Well, he's sure he was thinking that. I'm sure he was thinking that. He actually says that he knew from the first night that we met that we would be married, that I was the one. In fact, I just asked him that question again the other night, and he sticks by it. He says that he just knew.
So you make a happy match at age, in your 40s.
Right.
And you become a Broadway star at age 50.
God is good. It's incredible. It's incredible.
Well, you say God is good. Some
Yes.
might say God was a little late.
No, God's timing is perfect, because, you know, if it had happened at any other time in my life, I probably would not have been prepared for it. And for this role to come into my life when it did, I could not have been 25 years old. They were looking for a Polynesian woman from the South Pacific who was in her between 40s to 50s, who could be the mother of a daughter somewhere between 17 and 22 years old. She had to have this life experience behind her where she knew how to go toe-to-toe with men in the 1940s when women didn't do that. They were just looking for all of these things, and I was at a place in my life where I knew who she was inside. And then the opportunity came around.
Which you almost passed up.
Which I almost passed up, were it not for my husband, who kept insisting that I go. And I thought it was a wonderful opportunity that was coming this way, but I really thought that I was be making a fool of myself by going to this, because I have not studied acting. I've never studied acting. In fact, for that matter, I've never really studied singing professionally either. I just kind of did it. And this opportunity came, and I really didn't think that I was prepared, and up until the last half hour before I was supposed to be there. So my husband said to me, I'll drive you down there and you sing the songs and you work on it and just do your best. And Donald Yap had made a cassette tape for me of the musical accompaniment for Bali Hai, because we had to sing that at the audition. And we put this in the car, and I'm singing along with this at the top of my lungs, and I'm trying to memorize the sides of the script. And but I was just thinking, you know, all these other incredibly talented women from Hawaii are going to be at this audition. And when I got into the theater to sign up, there was Marlene Tsai sitting there, who is only an icon, you know.
She was auditioning as well?
She was auditioning as well. And she had just played this role with Hawaii Opera Theater. And so, of course, she knew the character much more than I did. I had done the music for the show in conventions many years ago, but had never portrayed the role in a stage production. And so she was there. I heard that Karen Kawi Hawaii had also been called. Sonia Mendez was there. There were all these wonderful, wonderful performers. And so to put my name on that list, I was just thinking, what am I doing here? Why am I signing this list? And I really didn't think that I had a chance at all. And we get called into the room to audition one at a time. And when I walked in, I said to them, I have not had the time to memorize this. May I use the script? And they said yes. And I just thought, at this point, all I can do is just give them what I can, because I don't have this memorized. And I went through this whole song, through all the scenes. I did Bali Hai, and thinking to myself, this is the one chance for a casting director to hear me. I better belt this last note. So I belted the last note. And as I left, the guy that was videotaping said to me, you did a really wonderful job. And that made me feel very good. But I walked out of the room, there was a trash can, and I had this packet, and I thought, I'll never hear from them. And I almost threw all of this stuff in the trash can. And then I thought, no, I'm going to hold on to it just in case. And I went up to the stage and started my rehearsal for You Somebody there at at Diamond Head, and I was just relieved to be finished with it. And I thought, you know, it was a chance that came. It was an opportunity. I was glad David talked me into it. I was glad I did it. But now I'm glad I'm over it so that I can get back to rehearsal for this show. And 2 days later, my phone rang. And
2 days?
2 days later, my phone rang. And it was this casting agent. And he said, I just want to let you know that you have been selected by the director, Bart Shear, for a callback audition in New York for a principal role in a Broadway show. And he knew how important it was to me that he said that, and he spoke it that slowly, and I didn't respond to him. And he said, are you there? And I said, yes, and he repeated it again. He said, you've been hand-selected. You got a call back. And I could not believe the words that I was going to be seen in New York. It was so overwhelming to me. And I said, who else got a call back? And he said, no one. You got the call back from Hawaii. And I just burst into tears because I know how talented these women are here. And I know that they are just as talented and ready for an opportunity like this, and that it would be given to me, that it was my responsibility for myself and for them to do the very best that I possibly could. Just because how often do any of us from Hawaii get an opportunity like this? So I cried my eyes out, and I called my husband, and I think somewhere between the sobs he understood what was going on. But as I was talking on to this, the casting agent, I was taking all this information down on a scrap piece of paper because I wasn't home when he called. And a couple of months ago, my husband found that piece of paper and he framed it. So we have that receipt at home where I have the casting agent's name and the dates and when they were flying me there. And so I got there to Lincoln Center. Never did I think that I would ever be called to audition there, that they would even think that to hire me for a role to perform there. So to stand on those hallowed grounds for performers, because it is the home of the New York City Ballet, the Metropolitan Opera, Avery Fisher, all the greatest musicians and performers in the world have aspired to perform there and have performed there. And I held David's hand and we cried and cried before I even went to this audition. So I went downstairs, and it was like a scene from Flashdance in her audition, where there's these huge tables and there's 4 people sitting behind the tables, and they have legal pads in front of them, and they ask you to come into the room. And basically the director said, hi, I'm Bart Shear. Are you ready? Let's start with a song. Sing Bali Hai for us. And it was one of the most stressful things that I had ever been through in my life. They were taking notes, and I could barely sing. I had all the classic signs of panic. You can't breathe. Your mouth goes dry, and you're supposed to have your big audition and sing. And I really thought I did horrible. They asked me to sit outside for 10 minutes, and then they called me back in, and they said, your big callback audition, which I didn't know there was a big one. I thought this was the only one, was supposed to be on Friday. This, I believe, was on a Wednesday when I was there. It was supposed to be on Friday, but there has been a conflict of schedules. We would like you to come back on Monday. And I said, that's fine. And the director said, well, since you're going to be here, can you come back tomorrow and we'll just work on this, and we'll work with the musical director on the song, and we'll just kind of play around with this. And I said, sure. But I really thought that they were just trying to utilize my time. And I left the theater, and I thought I had done so poorly that David came to pick me up, and I couldn't talk about it. For hours, I couldn't talk about it. And we went to dinner that night, and I finally tried to tell him about how horribly I had done, and I cried all the way through dinner, because I really brought all the insecurities that you bring as a performer with you when you don't have any formal training in this. I didn't have anything to fall back on. And then I realized in talking this out with him that, you know what, I can only be who I am and bring the experiences that I have in my life with me to this audition. They didn't ask if I was a Juilliard graduate. They didn't ask who my acting coach was.
It was all about performance.
Exactly. And so I went back the next day, and our director, Bart Scher, said, let's just try it from different angles. So I had the scenes memorized, and he said, let's make her happy. I want you to do all of these scenes, but make her happy. Nothing gets her down, nothing. I want you to just make her joyful and gleeful through the whole thing. So I went through all this material, making her just sizzling with excitement. And then he would listen to it and he'd say, okay, now let's do it a change. I want you to make her as angry as you can possibly make her. I want you to swear at me. The words aren't there, but I want you to swear. Use every word that you can think of.
What words did you use?
All the ones that we're not supposed to use on television. Because there are scenes that Bloody Mary battles, has these verbal battles with the sailors. And he said, if she's really tough, if she's going to be tough, what are the words that she's going to use? She's been hanging out with sailors and with all these soldiers. What do you think they've taught her? So he said, I want you to use it that way, but she doesn't mess around with them. Don't make it cute. I want it angry. So then I would have to turn it 180 and just go as angry and seething as I possibly could. And then he wanted to do it vulnerable. And we worked 3 days in a row, where he stretched like putty. And this is answering your question. He wanted bring out your Asian aunties, the Polynesian aunties, how did they treat their kids when they were growing up? Were they all sweet?
But he wanted a multi-dimensional person rather than the cartoonish Bloody Mary that we'd seen before.
Exactly. And she's normally been portrayed as kind of goofy and kind of voodoo mama-ish, but he wanted her as a real desperate mother. And I see now in the way that he has directed it, she is all of those things that he had us work on. So I had worked with Bart Scher, our director. I had worked with Ted Sperling, our musical director. We had pretty much honed in on what he was looking for in this character. And they tell me on Monday, you have 2 auditions. You have an 11 o'clock with Andre. And because I was so overwhelmed, I didn't want to ask them who Andre was, because I thought, they'll think I'm an idiot. So
Andre the Giant?
Exactly. And they said, so you have an 11 o'clock with Andre, and then at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, you have your audition for R&H. But my first concern was this callback audition for Andre, and I get in there and it's all these people. It's, along the table, there are more people at this table, along with the director and musical director, director of musical theater, producer of musical theater at Lincoln Center, the casting agent. There are all these people. And then there was this older, very distinguished man, and there was no other younger guy. There was the same guy that was reading to me. And so Bart says to me, okay, this is Andre, and I want you, so I said, hello. And he said, I want you to go through the whole audition as we worked it. So I took a deep breath and I started out and I did this whole audition. And this man, Andre, was sitting behind all the others, and he nodded his head. And then afterwards, he came up to me and he said, that was lovely, and I want you to do the same thing this afternoon. And he shook my hand and he gave me one of the highest compliments I've ever been paid. And I'm not accepting this only for myself, but as a performer. He said to me, this is my favorite musical of my entire life. And he said, but this is the first time in my life I ever understood what the words to Happy Talk meant and what they meant in this story. The song never made sense to me before. And that is, if I got that kind of reaction from him, it was because of Bart Scher, of his direction, because he was so brilliant. He was able to bring all of this information out in the song that I've never seen performed before either.
And who is Andre?
Andre Bishop is the artistic director of all of Lincoln Center. He's basically the boss, big boss, the
larger-than-life boss.
Yes, exactly. And one of the humblest, kindest, gentlest men I have ever met in my life. Just wonderful. And so I'll make a really long story short. The big callback then was at 4 o'clock. He said to me, go and rest. I want you to lay down and rest and then be here for this and just do the same thing you did for me, do that for them. So I get to the theater and I realize I get there about a half an hour before and they have a room for me to warm up in. When I left Diamond Head Theater, Brian, oh gosh, his name just left my head net right now. One of the prop guys made a shrunken head for me because my character brings a shrunken head in. And the last night at You Somebody, everyone that was in the show came by my room and I nicknamed him Harry and they blew kisses on Harry and aloha and good juju and all of these things, and I brought Harry to New York with me. So I pulled him out in my rehearsal space and I brought into the room with me everybody that was there because I knew this was the moment that everything that I have ever done in my life, everyone from my father meeting my mother to everything, to my mom marrying my stepdad and getting transferred to Hawaii, everything that has ever happened in my life has brought me to this moment. And I wanted to bring all of these people into the room with me. So I brought Harry out and I was thinking about all my friends and my family. I was thinking about my parents, my grandparents, my family, everyone. And I felt them. The room that I was in was swirling with angels. And I became calm all of a sudden and I thought, I'm gonna do the very best that I can because that's all that I can do. I can't be anything else but that. And I looked at my watch and it was 5 minutes to 4. There was a knock at the door and it was the casting agent, Bernie Telsey, who said, you know, we're ready. And they brought me into this room and there were probably at least 18 people that were all in there. No introductions were made. They just said, this is Loretta. She's auditioning for Bloody Mary. Are you ready? And I said, yes. And I took a deep breath and just went into the scenes and did everything that I could. And it just felt absolutely right and good. And even if I didn't get this role, the fact that I was seen for this, that I had this chance was just right for me. And when I finished with my audition, they applauded, and the director was trying to stop them from applauding. I don't know if that's a proper thing to do or not. And they asked me to sit outside, and I was sitting waiting. David, in the meantime, was outside by the fountain. And
you know, that's the first time in the audition process where you felt good about it.
Right, because it was that calm that came over me from feeling these angels. Like I said, it was the first time that I just felt like it really didn't matter if they gave me this or not. The fact that I was seen, the fact that I was flown to New York and I was seen at Lincoln Center. I didn't have to be given the job. It meant so much to me just to have had that happen. And they asked me to sit outside and they called me back in a few minutes later and everyone was still sitting there and they pulled up a chair for me. And Bart Shear said, well, we just wanted to let you know that, you know, we all talked in here and we decided that we wanted, because you're going to be going home, we all wanted to be in the same room with you to tell you. And he just paused. And it was that soap opera pause. And I was waiting and I was really hoping, at this point I had decided if they offered me the role of understudy, I would lose my mind because it meant I had a job in New York. And he said, offer you, to let you know that you got the part. And I was thinking, he didn't say understudy. And he said, did you understand me, honey? And he said, you got the role
of?
Will you be our Bloody Mary? And they burst into applause, and I remember thinking, this is the greatest moment of my life. This is the greatest moment of my life. And I burst into tears, and I tried to compose myself to talk to them. And he said, do you have anything to say? And I said, I just want to take you all home and feed you.
Once it.
Exactly. And he said, I want to introduce you to some of the people that are here. And he said, this is Mary Rodgers, daughter of Richard Rodgers. Wow. And this is Alice Hammerstein, daughter of Oscar Hammerstein. And I realized that these were the daughters of the two men who wrote and created American musical theater as we know it.
Are you glad you didn't know that before you sang?
I am so glad. I am so glad.
This is the legacy.
Right, exactly. And to get their approval just meant everything in the world to me. And they've both become dear friends, wonderful, wonderful women. And there's still that child in me, though, that just thinks, when I see them, I see their father's names in the sheet music that I looked at all of my life, of songs that I've sung all of my life. And it was just the greatest moment of my life. And to make it all more perfect, when we called David to tell him to come and meet me and make the announcement that I got the part, he said to me, I have to tell you, he said, I was sitting outside and I knew it was time for you to audition. And he said, I just started praying, and I prayed through all of our angels and, for everybody, to thank them for this moment. And he said, I just got the feeling that everything was right, that everything was perfect, and there were angels everywhere. And he said, I remember because I looked at my watch and it was 5 minutes to 4.
Fairy tales and dreams, they can come true. Sometimes it's just destiny. For Long Story Short and PBS Hawaii, I'm Leslie Wilcox. Ahui ho kako.
Long Story Short with Leslie Wilcox is produced in HD by PBS Hawaii with Sony technology. High definition, it's in Sony's DNA.
One of the nicest things ever was I got a note from Tom Hanks. He and his wife, Rita Wilson, had come to the show. And I didn't get to meet him that night, but I got back to my dressing room the next day, and there was this note that had my name on it, and on the back it said from TH and RW, and I was thinking, I don't know who this person is. And I opened it, and it was this beautiful, beautiful letter talking about how much he had loved the show. And he complimented me on my performance, and I think he said something in there, he referred to me as his peer. And I thought, how great is that? How great is that? And I will treasure that. I'm going to frame that, and I will treasure that the rest of my life.